Hey there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to another Red Pill Religion Freedom from Atheism Foundation weekly podcast. Red Pill Religion, where we say we do not negotiate with atheist terrorists. So please support our fundraiser and the work we do. Please be sure to visit redpillreligion.com. We are partnering with Freedom from Atheism Foundation these days. We're friends with those folks, and we're trying to raise money for them. But before we talk about that, please make sure to visit redpillreligion.com, where all of our stuff appears regularly. We have been shadow banned, blacklisted, whitelisted, chased off of multiple channels. We're trying to actually get something set up so that if we can raise $1,000, we can get on an independent podcasting network. We would love your support. Please find the links in the low bar. Please find the fundraiser on redpillreligion.com. Hit our PayPal. That's where we would most like to collect money. We will be giving updates as donations come in. We would appreciate them. They've come in a little slow, but we're going to start asking people a little harder to start donating. If we can make $1,000, we can help the folks at Freedom from Atheism Foundation and get this kind of independent, challenging content on the air in other places and not subject to the constant censorship found on so many other platforms. So find us on redpillreligion.com. And tonight we are going to be, this is our weekly Freedom from Atheism Foundation podcast. Please be sure to visit Freedom from Atheism. They do have a webpage, but they're primarily on Facebook, the Freedom from Atheism Foundation, which is almost 750,000 strong. And actually, although they operate on a shoestring budget with volunteers, they are considerably more powerful and influential on Facebook anyway than the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which has millions of dollars to play with. So we're doing pretty good on FFAF, and we wish those guys a lot of luck. We talk to them a lot. They're good guys. You'll see some of us here on Red Pill Religion, like Josh Brister and others, hanging out there. Speaking of which, who have we got joining us here tonight? First off, Red Pill Religion founding team member Andrew Chatalasis. Say hi, Andrew.
Good evening, everyone.
Also joining us is our good friend who's also been an official member of the team, done a lot of work behind the scenes, only a few streams, but good to have him on again tonight. Say hi to everybody, Aaron.
Hi to everybody, Aaron.
All right, and finally, we have this guy, Josh, that we just can't get rid of. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, good to be here. You brought up Freedom from Religion Foundation. Note that I debated and destroyed Dan Barker, their former president. Not too much of a challenge. We take on any and all of the best atheistic philosophers in the world. Yep.
Actually, yes. I don't debate professional atheists anymore because I did it for too long, and frankly, I get too impatient. And so guys like Andrew and Josh are doing it really better. I'm just too much of a bruiser, and I just have no more patience, and that's not good for debates. These guys are bruisers, but they have the delicate, I don't know, the dance of a swordsman to them. And
well, you can see.
I am the battle axe wielder. I wield the giant sledgehammer. That's just
you can really see how much they hate God. Well, just by talking to them, these guys really hate God. It's really important that we stand together and fight against this atheist propaganda campaign. Because I'm just thinking, 40 years from now, what's it going to be like? Christians are going to be thrown in prison potentially, so we need to fight back right now.
Christians, in fact, do get thrown into prison. Although I will say, by the way, that just like us on Red Pill Religion, one of the reasons we get along with the people from Freedom from Atheism Foundation is we defend other religions too. I mean, right now, the atheist Chinese government is torturing and murdering Muslims by the hundreds of thousands, trying to torture them to give up their faith. And all I'll say as a Christian is I'm pretty sure if a Muslim is murdered by an atheist regime for refusing to give up his faith, I think Jesus may just come for him. Really, it's unacceptable that we see when we see Orthodox pious Jews being abused. It's not okay. It is not okay when Muslims haven't harmed anybody, or haven't, when Hindus are abused, when Falun Gong are murdered. None of it is okay. And,
yeah.
But speaking to, we are mostly Christians here. Speaking of the first story on that, notice how It's a very small thing, but it's very noticeable. Alex Trebek of Jeopardy fame, you know, he's most well known in the United States. I'm pretty sure in other countries they have their own Jeopardy hosts. But this has been, guy's been the host of the game show Jeopardy for, gosh, 30 years now or more. He's extraordinarily well known in the US and Canada. And amongst other things, he recently, you know, had a victory in his battle against cancer. And he thanked the people who sent him prayers and were praying for him for why he's still there. And the NBC, the news organization that the organization he works for, cut that out because they didn't want to offend anybody. Isn't that ridiculous?
It is. I mean, and this is the thing that is that secular atheists are often even more like religiously intolerant than like ISIS. They don't want anyone practicing. They don't want to hear about anyone practicing a religion. It sounds like, basically.
Yeah, if you're actually going to get butthurt because people pray and believe in that, which, by the way, there is, in fact, scientific evidence that prayer works. Don't let any atheist liar tell you there is no such evidence. But even then, if it's nothing to you and you believe it's harmless, then why are you leaving? You know, why attack the guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to bring something up. There was a lot of prayers that were aimed at me when I was in a car accident, when I was in a coma for a month. It's not atheism that saved me. It's prayers and God guiding the doctors and helping them, and prayers that brought me back. I was given no hope past to survive the first night. They said I would be in a wheelchair. I would never walk. I would be in a vegetative state. Now I have a master's degree. I have a perfect GPA. I never fell on anything. And it just shows what God can do. And we're not going to let atheism take this away from us. This is commonsensical.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Well, speaking of atheist terrorism, I'm also very concerned that Target is colluding with the Al Qaeda. I don't know if you've seen. There's a video that's being shared around online of some film that somebody took while he was shopping there, and they're selling all of these clothes that are basically geared towards the gay rights agenda, but they're made for, you know, toddlers. So we need to be on edge, or on alert, on high alert, excuse me, with Target and the Al Qaeda.
Well,
because they're I think a faction of atheist terrorists, if I'm not mistaken. No, the Al Qaeda, Al Qaeda, Al Qaeda, Gayda.
Okay, I have never heard of Al Qaeda. So who is Al? Are you talking about Al Qaeda, the ones who supposedly bombed, did 9/11 and stuff? Or are you talking?
No. This is the Al Qaeda, Gay. Okay. They're not as known, as widely known as the Al Qaeda because of PC politics, basically.
It's like an SJW type thing.
It's like the gay version of the Al Qaeda.
Okay. Oh, that's appropriate.
Oh, Al Qaeda.
Google search it, seriously. Like,
it's always the gays and transgenders trying to always smuggle in their ideology somehow. They're just an offshoot of the whole, idiot empire that we need to confront.
Well, the bottom line is that, I mean, one thing that's worth noting is that secular interests definitely often get involved in that sort of thing. Al Qaeda, for example, and certainly ISIS were largely funded by non-religious secular interests, including the US CIA, and that's not a conspiracy theory either. It is well worth noting, even when you hear of a religious groups going something bad, it may not ultimately be religious people who are funding them or are motivating it. But getting into moving on to the next story, this is just a recent one on Freedom from Atheism Foundation. Here's a story on the College Fix: a man forced out of his PhD program because of his open faith in Jesus Christ. And you know, there was a time when I'll still get atheists laugh and say that didn't really happen. He really lost his PhD, or this happened to him because he's just stupid. He's not good. He's just a whiner. But at this point, I've heard from enough people, enough Christians who've experienced this sort of horrible discrimination, including, you know, and then others who faced it because they made they turned religious after they were in academia and they got tenure. So, you know, for example, Rachel Fulton Brown, who we've had on 3 times, we've had her on now. And the only reason she still had a job is because she didn't come out as a Christian until after she had tenure. The bottom line is academia is rife with bullying of religious people, especially Christians in the US and Europe, I think.
Yeah. There's this documentary out, and you can watch this on YouTube. Actually, it's called Expelled. With I forgot who it was with. It talks about the intelligent design movement and the controversy that was going on at Baylor University and so forth. And yeah, if you don't already have tenure, you can potentially, and this happens a lot, lose your teachership. So Christians, again, this just speaks to the fact that we need to stand up now so we don't have to deal with this later.
This sort of thing does have no bottom. And the thing that tells you it has no bottom is people who show up on Freedom from Atheism Foundation. You look at the comments they leave. They're virtually identical to the hate content that you see daily on Atheist Republic and other sites. They're hateful beyond belief. And even when you bring up things like, oh, let's say this next story, you know, a new human rights report notes that religious repression in China is getting worse and worse. That is a specifically atheist regime where atheists run around and throw people in jail or kill them or torture them or just throw them in jail or put them in mental hospitals and whack them up with drugs or lobotomize them for the crime of being religious. And they do those for specifically atheist reasons, by the way, to uphold their official state atheism. They don't do it for the reason of communism. They don't do it for love of Chairman Mao. They do it because they believe atheism should rule everything and that religion is wrong and bad and must be eliminated. That's their ideology. And when an atheist won't say, yeah, that's totally wrong, it's horrible and disgusting, and when instead they laugh, they prove they are the enemy of religious people and should not be trusted, and that this could happen here. And when they scoff and say you're paranoid and stupid, that's reason to even get more suspicious of them and ask whether you should even accept an atheist as a friend if they won't take this seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you know,
I want to
let Aaron go. Go ahead, Aaron.
Mind, you know, it's a weird situation. I've learned a little bit more about the situation with the Uyghurs. Is I hope I'm pronouncing it right, in China, and I don't defend China as far as what they're doing. At the same time, it's a weird situation because they're apparently being supported by ISIS, which is you know, which, you know, and ISIS is just in a way sort of like the other side of you know, of nationalism. You know, they're except they're you know, just I've heard you before, Max, kind of describe ISIS as like an atheist Islam in a way, and I think that's pretty accurate since, you know, they were kind of created in a huge way by the CIA, and so that's important to take into account. However, yeah, it's a weird situation concerning the dynamics there, and you know, considering it's like two, in a way, they're kind of stuck in between these two different atheist extremes, if that makes any sense. And you know, what do we do about that? How do,
I think
how do
I
we
know.
deal with that?
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I would not declare ISIS an atheist group. What I would say is that secular forces, including people not at all religious, were a huge part in creating ISIS. And in fact, there is even evidence that people like the extreme and often distorted, I'm sorry, I get screamed at and people turn blue in their face when I say it, but when I say the work of Pam Geller and Robert Spencer, Jihad Watch and Atlas Shrugged is irresponsible and propagandistic and causes issues, I mean it, they do, because the way they talk about Islam is a problem. Because, you know, they have this relentlessly negative slant on everything, and this the most relentlessly negative possible interpretation of actions of Muslims throughout all of history, to the point where you know, they treat Muslims like just total orcs, total monsters who can't be trusted or talked about or even dealt with. I've literally had people say they're animals, and they usually that Muslims are animals. And it usually comes from people influenced by the likes of Jihad Watch and Atlas Shrugged. But I can tell you, I've even seen reports, talk to people from the intel communities and stuff back when I used to be plugged in 10 plus years ago. And ISIS used books from people like Jihad Watch and websites like Jihad Watch as inspiration. And there's reason to believe CIA and other forces use that material to tell a lot of ISIS recruits, yes, this is how you should act. So yeah, there is a definite boomerang of, you know, to me, it's very much like people who manipulate Christians into believing things that don't make sense either. But also don't get me wrong. I don't think ISIS fighters are Boy Scouts or stupid. I think that they're bloodthirsty murderers and mercenaries and hated by most Muslims in that part of the world. I think they're motivated by bizarre ideology and had a lot of secular forces. That doesn't mean ISIS is okay, or even that I have no criticism or problem with Islam. But yeah, and no, this is a way of doing it. People who don't believe in religion or hate religion will cynically manipulate it and exploit it. No problem.
Well, that's Marxism.
Yeah, and the other thing is we have to keep in mind that Islam is a much larger category than ISIS, right? It's sort of like someone criticizing Christianity based on the doctrines and policies of Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's reason to believe CIA and others were involved in promoting Westboro Baptist Church. You have to be one of the growing majority of Americans who believe that there's a deep state that controls our press, but there is one. Most president even talks about it now, so you're not crazy to think of it. But let's move on to another story. This is one that really gets to me. I love it. I was pleased, though. The Washington Post published this, which is very unusual for something like the Washington Post. They published a story saying that Hitler hated Judaism, but that he loathed Christianity too. And I'm glad the Washington Post published that. That's the only reason I'm actually calling this out, because anybody who's responsible, who's done their research, already knows this, but most of the internet does not, including all the professional atheist groups professional atheist hate groups like Atheist Republic and Atheist Experience, American Atheists, all of them tend to put out this hate propaganda saying Hitler was a Christian. And then when you say that's a lie, they'll say, nah, see, and they'll pull some old quotes for him from 20 years before he did anything bad, and they lie. Hitler loved Christianity.
Hitler used Christianity. He had a whole evolution. You can see that he said some good things in the early part of his dictatorial career, but towards the end and towards the middle, he was no fan of it. There's this great book. It's called Hitler's Table Talk. Hitler's Table Talk.
That's a good example.
Yeah, it goes through his private conversations at the dinner table and so forth, his diary and so forth. This exposes that lie. Hitler was not a Christian. He hated Christians. He hated Christians with a vehemence.
Purged them from all of his elite officer corps and every part of his government.
Yeah,
it was by the end of the war, there was not a single Christian anywhere in his government. And that matters because when they spread the filthy lie that he was acting in the name of Christianity, many of them, the professionals, know they lie. They know they're lying, that they're taking things completely out of context. They know this. The average rank and file, like I see someone from Red Bean Religion, that dolt over here, they don't know because they don't look. They just believe whatever they see in these stupid internet forums. But it really matters. Maximilian Mary Kolbe was murdered by Nazis for the crime of being a Christian. That's literally what happened to him. And there were millions of others that happened to.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's not acceptable. Go ahead.
I'll give some anecdotes. Emil Brunner, who was a very theological heavyweight in mainstream Protestantism in the 1930s, was a Swiss citizen who spoke German and was in Germany. And he resigned when the order came down that every church minister basically had to sign a contract affirming that they were obedient to the state over the church. And he refused and returned to Switzerland. And there's an anecdote where every Swiss citizen has to take an oath to defend the country and serve the military if called upon. And they said, yes, I do, especially if Germany invades. And that was the attitude of the more pious Lutherans in Germany, that they were not going to submit to this worldly authority of the state, and they were basically marginalized, and then in various ways throughout it, including and up to execution, if you crossed the wrong people or were too explicitly disobedient.
That's right. In fact, there were a number of Catholic martyrs. There's also this vicious lie that the Catholic Church had friendly relations with Hitler, and again, it is a vicious lie. They can only do that by picking certain specific events and things out of context and ignoring everything else. And it is hate propaganda when they do that.
Well, it's very convenient. This history is very convenient. When you take something out of context, out of its proper historical context, you can make anything say anything. That's why you can't reduce history to individual parts. You have to look at the whole context. And when you do, the church was not a friend of Hitler. I'm not even a Catholic. The church was not a friend to Hitler. Hitler hated Christianity. So do away with that myth, please.
He persecuted Catholics, and I wanted to add, this is important, Lutherans and some others, but especially Lutherans. In fact, there's more than one Lutheran martyr to Hitler. Was Dietrich Bonhoeffer one of them? Hofer?
Yes.
I'm actually wish I could remember some of the other names right now, but I do remember Bonhoeffer. I don't hope I'm spelling it right or saying it right. There were quite a few, and Hitler tried at one point to get rid of Christianity. Then he tried creating his own thing called positive Christianity, which was totally fake, atheist Christianity, where Jesus is a Nazi, very much like liberation theology, where Jesus is a commie, that some leftists try to push, and people who resisted that and wanted nothing to do with it, they were gunned down. They were sent to concentration camps. They were tortured. It's not funny. And when I meet some young punk atheist and he just laughs, I think, yeah, when you laugh like that, this is why we used to have laws in the UNS saying that no atheist should be allowed to hold public office. When I get some snotty punk atheist laugh at stuff like this, I think we need to bring those laws back and enforce them.
Yeah, our founding fathers would never want an atheist in government. They despised atheists. Some of them were deists, that's true. Most of them, like Benjamin Rush or Jonathan Witherspoon, were outspoken Christians. I teach American history. These atheists simply have a historical amnesia that's incredible. I'm sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Well, the other thing is they don't realize that the tone of these remarks is equivalent to some snotty kid laughing at a black American talking about the horrors of lynching in the 1920s. I mean, that's the same type of spirit that's over them, of this animus, basically.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
something else I wanted to point out, if I may. That also kind of correlates between just the history repeating itself and the Nazis and all that stuff. And the fact that Hitler was also very influenced by theosophy and the occult and all that. And the positive Christianity was in a way kind of a cover for that. I from everything that I've learned about it so far. And he also worked with a guy named Amin al-Husseini. He was a Palestinian Arab nationalist and Muslim leader. He was the Arab. He was a mufti, Sunni mufti in the mandatory Palestine before Palestine, when Palestine was occupied by the British Empire. And there was this dynamic where the Nazis basically I think used him and other Sunni Muslims partially he was also, that's another thing, another important thing I forgot to mention is that part of his job was, I'm just kind of looking for it here on this page, but he was a propagandist. He became a propagandist for the Nazi Party. And he I'm just kind of trying to find.
Who became the propagandist?
It was Amin al-Husseini, he became a propagandist for the Nazi Party. And basically, just what I'm getting at here is, in a way, I think a lot of Muslims are being used because the left, and a lot of atheists from the left hate traditional Christianity, and they seem to be using Islam as a way, to carry out their war against Christianity.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Andrew. And
that's what's happening now today, and I think they may have been doing it then too, to some extent, because of the role that people like al-Husseini played in the Nazi Party.
Right.
I'm trying to look for the part about his role as a propagandist.
That's all right. That's all right. We know that there definitely were people like that in the Nazi regime. What were you going to say, Andrew?
I was going to say that basically that there is a wedge in progressivism that looks at Islam as sort of the counter Christianity, but the irony is that Christians would get along much better in an Islamic society, a classical Islamic society, than secularists would. And then the other thing I would say is that secularism has infected all these cultures, including Islamic culture, and harmed them significantly, not just the West.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah, if I may, really really fast, I'm reading here from the Wikipedia page on him that Husseini was and remains a highly controversial figure. Historians dispute whether his fierce opposition to Zionism was grounded in nationalism or anti-Semitism, or a combination of both. Opponents of Palestinian nationalism have used Husseini's wartime residence and propaganda activities in Nazi Germany to associate the Palestinian national movement with European-style anti-Semitism.
Okay.
He was more a propagandist, against Jews, specifically.
Yeah.
But I think now, you know, it's like Jews have the state of Israel. Christians don't have their own state, you know, unless you're talking about like maybe Mormons or something, and you know, and maybe, you know, Christianity is seen as a bigger threat to a lot of these, you know, atheist leftist movements who are, you know, basically conveniently siding with Muslims. You know, it's like when the enemy of, or the enemy of the friend of my enemy is the friend.
Yeah, and that's an interesting take. I know there are people in the Middle East who feel that way. And it has actually shocked me a few times. But I think that is a case of Christians being used as a demon character because there aren't any, you know, in those areas. What I can tell you about, and this is also not known but by enough people, Wikipedia is a terrible source, but I mean, you can probably verify some of that's there, and there's more that you can look at. If you look into the history of fascist philosophy, not what, you know, trendy college kids or Marxists call fascists, but actual fascist philosophy, which is rooted in Hegel and some of these same assumptions as Marx, but not all. And it is a well-developed economic and social and political philosophy. It's explicitly secular and more or less anti-religious. It's called fascism, and the Nazis had a number of allies throughout the Arab world during the war. And fascism spread from Italy and Germany into the Arab and Islamic world. And the fascist ideology took hold. And if you look, in fact, if you look into the history of Saddam Hussein, his party was something called the Ba'ath Party, B-A-A-T-H, Ba'ath Party, explicitly a fascist party, which was allied with Hitler and Mussolini and the rest during World War II. Literally, they were allies of the Nazis, and they had adopted fascist ideology. That's what you find in Iraq. That is also, you'll find that in something called the Syrian National Party in Syria, which flies a red flag, you know, and it looks just like a swastika. It's not, but I mean, it looks exactly like an Arabized Nazi flag. Nazism never died, and that is a secular ideology that spread from Europe into the Arab world and has been a terrible enemy to many Muslims. Although they work with some Muslims, they also kill a lot of Muslims. And they also like to, and there's a lot of people in that part of the world who think that's all a Christian influence, when in fact, no, it's a European secular ideology that spread into the Arab world. And Arab fascists like to kill Muslims. I mean, they also like to work with Muslims, but then they like to kill them too. And that's the same as fascists do everywhere. They also hate communists, but they will also kill communists. They hate, yeah. So it's not too stunning when you hear that some Muslim, Arab, whatever, was working with Hitler and doing propaganda for him, because the Nazis had allies all over the Arab world, and some of them are still around. Some of the families that were allied with Hitler are still in power in that part of the world. So it's worth knowing all that before you just, and when people start talking about religion, be careful, because you never know what's really going on. Let's move to something a little more fun. Well, my gosh, how's our time going on this stream? We're probably going to have to end it soon. But this is a great one. I love it. It's just a meme. People who constantly shove their religious, oh no, I lost it. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Ah, it was a funny meme.
Well, I had that meme. I posted that on my page too, and it's caused quite the controversy. I think it's a pretty accurate. The people that are shoving their worldview down others' throats, it's not Christians. It's the SJW types, the atheist types, trying to raise taxes in the name of some utopian vision. It's atheism that's shoving down their beliefs down others' throats.
Oh, and they are, and it's not just the social justice leftists, as I hear white nationalists, not just white nationalists, other nationalists too, disparaging religion all the time, talking about how it's obsolete, needs to be gotten rid of, it's in the way, nobody believes this anymore, it's dying. I had a white nationalist tell me, well, literally say that, if your religion gets in the way of our goals, we would have to get rid of it. And I'm just like, okay, yeah. No, atheists lie and they pretend that they're having other people's religious views shoved down their throats while they're busy shoving their personal religious views down other people's throats. Plus, by the way, they're just obnoxious. I mean, have you just noticed how many of them just run around saying stuff about sky fairies and imaginary friends and
oh my God,
and just as part of everyday conversation, like everybody needs their religious opinions wherever they go.
They are so obnoxious that they do this all the time. That look, if they come up to us and they keep badgering us and saying we're irrational, look, they don't believe in reason. I'm starting to think that atheism should be redefined as the lack of reason.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's especially interesting from our perspective, right? Because God is the logos, which is in some sense the reason for being, and to not be oriented towards that in the mode of your life is going to cause all sorts of dysfunctions on how you even think about things or the cognitive abilities to perceive things. And I think that hits at something really, really close to it, Josh. I think you're dead on.
Yeah, and I was actually going to make a similar comment about postmodernism and how it's hard to tell much of a difference. I mean, other than I can find some postmodernists who still claim to be spiritual, and they don't necessarily defend atheism per se, but they're still very anti-religious. They're still very much like anti-Christian, just tradition, and there's that part. And then I've also found that there's all these other interesting things, historical facts I've come across about how there's maybe you guys know more about this. It's, I think, called the Old Catholic Church.
Old Catholics, that's a schismatic splinter group, but yeah, they're around.
Yeah, a guy named J.I. Wedgwood, and the Liberal Catholic Church, and that how they were also tied to theosophy.
Well, that's going way into another splinter, because liberal Catholics tied to theosophy have almost completely left the Christian reservation and are nowhere near to anything Catholic anymore. They would have to be condemned as heretical, especially following theosophy, which is specifically an anti-Christian philosophy. So, I mean, some super liberal Christian may think he can integrate it, but it is explicitly anti-Jewish, anti-Christian, even anti-Islam.
And atheists just aren't heretical. They're terrorists. They're rhetoricians of terrorism. I've gotten this sense from debating them, that these aren't sophisticated guys. They're not a Dr. Graham Oppie. He's sophisticated, but the ones we're usually talking to, these professional ones, these are terrorists of rhetoric, of simplicity.
Yep. And their fans and followers are hateful goons. And that's the nicest term I can think of for them, is hateful goons. I can come up with much worse, but it really describes them. And when they come by here, they act like hateful goons. It matters, and I've had enough of atheists whining that they're getting religion forced down their throat. Get on Twitter, get on some public forums, and just start being a Christian and watch what happens to you. It's happened to too many people that I know, even people I've tried to help. It's ridiculous.
Well, let's be honest. A lot of these Twitter atheists, they're assholes.
Oh, they are.
Okay? I mean, there's no other way around it. The way that they act, and we rightfully call them terrorists. That we don't negotiate. We can't reason with y'all if you're badgering us and saying we're irrational. You're the ones that think that the universe came into existence without a cause, out of nothing and by nothing. We try to reason with you, and then you belittle us.
Here's another one. Let's go ahead and move on to another story. We do have other stories on FFA, blah, blah. This will set off some fireworks, but who cares? Scientific research shows that traditional women are the happiest. And it doesn't surprise me in the least. Now, there is, of course, this myth that women are oppressed under traditional Christian relationships, which is a horrible lie and always has been. And I do mean always. For thousands of years, it's been a lie. Women have never been oppressed by the Christian religion, ever. But traditional roles, women tend to be very happy. That's the other thing, too. They will pitch religion as something that oppresses women. Tell it to the women who are happy to be religious. People use women like this all the time. It gets annoying to me, but I can't help but note that most of feminism is very Christian hostile and trades in false Christian history. Oh my God. Oh, have you seen that atrocious feminist hate propaganda TV mini series? The what's it called? Not the what?
Oh.
What with the women who are all?
The Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale. Oh my God! Pure raw hate propaganda against Christians. Straight up is all that is. And
well, the hilarious thing is if you took any, even your least favorite evangelical leader in America, they would point out all the things that are totally wrong in that, and it's absurd. It's not even a caricature of Christianity. It's a straw man.
It is,
and that's also a perfect example of what I was talking about now. As far as the way the I guess progressive atheists tend to side with Muslims when it's convenient for them.
But then we'll kill them or throw them under the bus when it's not.
Because they mention nothing about the way women are treated in some areas, Muslim women, that is. There's nothing about that, but then they'll just make up all this other stuff.
I lose people on this one too, but I hate the way they lie about the way Muslim women are treated. For the most part, Muslim women are treated extremely well. Even in places where they're supposedly oppressed by, like Saudi Arabia, women are treated extremely well, are extremely privileged, and have all sorts of rights and privileges men don't. Even in the bad old days when they couldn't drive, women had more protection and more provision and more rights than men did. And that's why I never even respected that whole women should be allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. Did you ask the Saudi Arabian women? Because for decades, Saudi Arabian women didn't want it. And they had good reasons too. If you ever bothered to talk to them, that is. I notice all these people who talk about religion and what it does to women, they talk to shockingly few traditional religious women while doing it. By the way, Ayan Hirsi Ali is a fraud. Just wanted to put that out there. Here's a good image. I like this one. Made me laugh.
Well, it's true. And the more thoughtful atheists will actually point out that they don't believe that there is such a thing as moral obligation, and that they just arbitrarily choose to follow a given moral system by will alone.
Yeah, just to read in case anybody says, which button do you press? Accuse theists of having an imaginary God or admit to having imaginary morals? Atheists get so angry when you point out that they have no morals, but they have no morals. They don't believe in them. They really don't. And they'll say, yes, I do. And they'll get angry and they'll fulminate and they'll make moral pronouncements. But when you get them, they all admit, that morality, they all admit morality is relative. It's all a matter of perspective. You don't have a right. Yet, of course, they are the biggest moralizing bullies on the internet.
Yeah, it's arguing with a child with a temper tantrum. It's the level of sophistication doesn't rise much higher than a 7-year-old with a temper tantrum.
Or is it a terror tantrum?
Ooh, I like that.
It is a terror.
It's a terror
It's a
tantrum.
temper and a terror tantrum because, as you know, we do not negotiate with atheist terrorists.
But it is a temper tantrum, and it's frequently a temper tantrum out of a 35-year-old man.
Maybe we should just call them tantrumists.
Yeah, no kidding.
Maybe they're not even deserving of the title of terrorists. They're not even that important.
All right, now here's yet another fun story. I like this. John Lennox. I always love listening to John Lennox. He of course can be. John Lennox is an Oxford mathematician and works with a lot of scientists. Is quite brilliant and is a serious Christian. I'd call him more or less an evangelical, I guess. Within a British context, that's more complicated. But he's brilliant scientifically and mathematically, and funny. And he points out, amongst other things, that the science really runs against atheism no matter where you look. That's the grandest irony. If you really understand science and are really familiar with all the different areas in contemporary science where this matters, atheism is ridiculously stupid, completely indefensible, and may be a psychological abnormality. Because we've got science indicating all of that.
Well, it's a pathology. I mean, the hatred towards something that that they acknowledge or that they have made up to themselves, that something doesn't exist, yet they hate it. And you can see that when you talk to them. Like, the more I talk to them, the more I debate them, the more I think that they are pathological and possibly need to see a counselor or a psychologist.
I actually do think that is true. In fact, we have data on this. We know that most of them have father issues. Most of them grew up in broken homes. Most of them were abused. Most of them are male. And it's not just Paul Vitz's research either. Gary Habermas and others have been doing a lot of research on it, and most of them got shattered somehow in childhood. They got severely damaged somehow in childhood, and they're very angry about it, and they won't admit it. But it's very, and if you look up what father issues actually look like go into an old psychological thing and look up what father issues actually look like. Look at it carefully, then look at what you're seeing when you're interacting with young atheists today, on the internet or even in person. They've all got daddy issues. They're all very sensitive. They're all very egotistical. They're all narcissistic. They're all quite narcissistic. Some of them are unaware of how narcissistic they are, but they're all narcissistic. Even the ones that are the least narcissistic tend to be the autistic ones. And the autistic ones tend to be more likely to be just befuddled.
Well,
but otherwise, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm looking at Faith of the Fathers by Paul Vitz right now. You can name them off. Friedrich Nietzsche, David Hume, Bertrand Russell, Sartre, Camus, Arthur Schopenhauer, Tom Hobbes, Voltaire. Look, all of these guys, every one of them almost had father issues. This is related. There's a correlation, a high degree that something is going on here. It's pathological.
Yeah. And here's a new one. I don't even know what to say about this one because I haven't read it. But Science Daily reports that death anxiety increased atheists' unconscious belief in God. Dr. Nathan Hefflick declared in a Psychology Today article, but at a less conscious or preconscious level, this research suggests that there might be less atheism in foxholes than atheists in foxholes report. The jig is just about up. Just the scientific analysis of the atheist population alone runs against atheism. Even if there was no God, we would have to conclude that to be healthy, you have to imagine one. Because atheists, not only do they almost all suffer psychological problems, and not only are they more likely to be drug addicted, they're more likely to be suicidal, they're more likely to have unstable relationships, broken marriages, or none at all. They tend to have no kids or few kids. They tend to go to jail more often too, by the way. The atheist forums, they lie all over the internet. The atheist groups lie all over the internet. Atheists are more likely to go to jail, not less. College-educated atheists in good professions are the ones less likely to go to jail.
Not just that, but Rodney Stark, in one of his other books, we don't discuss here much. I can't think of it. It's in my office. They believe in UFOs more. They believe in the occult more. They believe in all types of things. The Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot. They were asked questions on these different surveys.
Oh, yeah.
And atheists are way higher on these. It seems to me, what's going on? If you get rid of God, you're going to make God in your own idiosyncratic image.
Think of how many science fiction stories have been written, Arthur C. Clarke and many others, that posit, or even some of the ones who try and explain away the digital physics thing by positing some kind of super advanced, super intelligent alien civilization that's really running things. And it's like, so you've imagined gods that you've decided to call aliens because they're super more powerful than us and super more knowledgeable than us and super more intelligent than us and have powers we can barely imagine. You've imagined you've created an alien god idea. That is all you've done. They can't escape it, can they? It's ridiculous. Uh-oh, hey, wait, here's a fun story. Here's a fun story. We got a little shout out. Apparently, a couple Baptists and Anglicans named Josh and Andrew were talking to this S.J. Thomason and Lisa Quintana. How did that conversation go anyway?
I think it went pretty well. There were a few points of theological disagreement on things like ecclesia or how churches should be structured, but it was a really great conversation and very productive, I'd say. And the disagreements were just interesting things to chat about. So,
well, that's good to hear. All right, here's one, and we're going to close this up pretty soon. But I love doing this review of the content. Another cool infographic making fun of atheists. The future according to theists, happy and bright, and according to atheists. That's not my favorite one though, but. Yeah, have you noticed that once you go atheist, you tend to really start believing in the AI God and the tech future? Mind you, there's reason to think they're going to push this stuff on us, but it just like with the aliens thing, atheists can't stop. Like, there's this other thing that's going around too in some of these transhumanist, futurist, atheist groups. Isn't there this one logic problem that's messed up a lot of nerds? Andrew, where they figured out that the ultimate AI will eventually be built, and if it's the ultimate AI, it will be able to go back into the past and kill anybody that tries to stop it from being made, kind of thing.
Yeah, specifically, and it came from this one subculture called Less Wrong, that if you make the ultimate AI, it'll be able to recreate basically anyone who knew that they could bring about the AI faster and torture it for all eternity. Basically, they've reinvented like hyper-Calvinism for atheists.
Yeah.
I also have some interesting background information on how the occult ties in with a lot of that too, because you have all of these different occultist groups, such as the Thelemites or Thelemites, and a lot of people who are associated with counterculture who had a very strong influence on ideas that that are basically centered around the modern day, the internet. We have there is a group called, I believe, the Illuminati of Thanatos. I have to double check on that, but there's all these counterculture figures who were involved with that organization, and you can go back and listen to some of their videos. A good one is William S. Burroughs. and he very much was influenced by a lot of postmodernist ideas, and he also discusses a lot of ideas that are connected or relating to the Internet of Things.
Who's this again?
William S. Burroughs.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Burroughs. He's something else, and he's a definite influential thinker on that transhumanist thing. By the way, transhumanism is a religion at this point, and should, in my view, be treated as one. They have a lot of things they believe they can't prove. They have this presuppositional world. I mean, they have this whole presuppositional thing going about their entire philosophy. There absolutely will be the AI. The AI will be smarter than all of us. The AI will rule us. Eventually, we'll merge our intelligence with the AI and spread out into the galaxy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is at least as weird as Scientology.
It's just a God substitute.
It is.
It's odd. It's
the organization I'm referring to is called the Illuminatis. I can just do a screen share really fast if you guys don't mind. But it's the Illuminatis of Thanateros, I think is how you pronounce it.
I think I've heard
and if you look at the initials are the same as IoT, Internet of Things.
And they claim they are officially atheistic, and if you listen to them, they're atheistic. But instead, their God is this idea of the future and their inevitable place in it.
But there is if you look at the Wikipedia page, I'm screen sharing here. I'll have to go back to. Am I screen sharing it? Yeah.
You're not. I don't see what you're talking about. Sorry.
I'd have to go back then.
All right, we can go look it up later. What's it called?
If you look at the Wikipedia page on that, there is a chaos symbol. It's as far as atheism goes, if it leaves the door open to chaos.
Yes, these people.
There's a direct relationship there between atheism and the occult in that way.
It is. There is a definite link between atheism, occultism in general. There's a link between atheism and occultism. Tons of atheists, especially a lot of the professionals too. You'll see them. You'll rock them catching the Satan stuff, and you'll rock them getting into other occultist stuff. They'll even say, "I'm open-minded. I just don't like this." Yeah, no. The fact of the matter is that there are supposedly godless organizations, secular organizations that say they wish to escape all the primitive religious superstitions of the past, and we don't believe some mighty God who's running everything. So we're just going to create the AI tech future that and create the next evolutionary stage of humanity. And it is a religion. And the thing is, they can do some of the stuff they're talking about. I don't think they can do it all, but they're going to try. And it's worth knowing this.
A lot of this stuff we're talking about, transhumanism, and this whole thing with debating and dialoguing, it's more and more, it's sounding like atheists want to be God.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, very much.
All right. So I'll tell you what. Yeah. We just about hit our hour here. So does anybody I'd like everybody to get a chance at a closing thought. Andrew, did you have a closing thought?
I guess, and this is usually my closing thought is we have to pray for these people that are so disoriented and misguided, and that they do not succeed at what they seem to be trying to do, which is attacking the trunk and key part of the spiritual system that provides sustenance for our civilization. And yeah, that's my final thought.
Amen, sir. Aaron, make it quick, but did you have any final thoughts? Nope. Okay. Josh, did you have any final thoughts?
No. Just want to reiterate that we don't negotiate with atheist terrorists on here on Red Pill Religion, and we are proud of who we are and what we stand for, and we're not going to take denigration anymore. And I'm calling for all Christians, let's peacefully but firmly stand up to these bullies.
And while it freaks some Christians out, I'll say it again. I will stand next to Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and anybody else on that fight, because
I think I may have been muted before. But I do have some final thoughts. You know, as somebody,
you have 1 minute. Make it fast.
Yeah, I'll make it really fast. Just as somebody who you know struggled with godlessness, and you know who was sort of leaning towards atheism for different reasons. You know, I can sort of understand why people might tend to do that, and you know, and I genuinely feel sorry for a lot of people who are going through, you know, some atheist, you know, I don't know if you want to call it a phase, because I guess there's a lot of people who end up growing out of it at some point. But you know, I feel bad for them, and you know, I'll keep you in my prayers if you know whoever's listening out there.
Yeah, and by the way, Aaron is still he more or less is still exploring spiritually, because it really is true that it's more than Christians that atheists target, although it's clear who they hate the most. Although they hate Orthodox observant Jews and Muslims just about as much. I'll close with this one. It's a quote from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "If today I lived in a communist country where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I would openly advocate disobeying that country's anti-religious laws." And you know what? I would just take the word communist out of there, because that's not the important word here. Anti-religious laws are a form of discrimination. They are a form of thought police. They are a form of social control. Anti-religious laws are not okay. If you're going to have laws about religion, then you get to start specifying which religions are okay and which ones aren't. And by the way, atheists, you are in no way neutral and not allowed to stand between us and act like you're the rational party between us. As an atheist, we might even argue that you have no place in the conversation, since most of us aren't atheists and never will be. Although I used to be one. I knew I was in the minority then, and atheists, you will always be the minority. You're even the minority in countries where atheism is legally enforced, and where religious people go to jail for being religious. You're still a minority even in places like that, like China, where atheists are the minority, but they rule. And all of this matters. And I know that our friends at Freedom from Atheism Foundation agree with us on all of this. Please, by the way, do check out and go give a like and check out the Freedom from Atheism pages. And please check us out on redpillreligion.com. Help us raise $1,000. We got 25 so far. We need to raise $1,000 for Freedom from Atheism Foundation and to upgrade our recording equipment and get us on some podcast networks. So please hit redpillreligion.com and hit that tip jar.
And one more thing. If you're hearing this broadcast, you are the resistance, and you need to get this message out. We need to share this link, the Red Pill Religion link. You promote it. Let's get this message out. Let's grow this channel. Let's grow this, guys.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Please hit that bell. Please tell your friends or enemies. And remember, you really don't have to be bullied by an atheist. And no, the Bible does not require that of you. So God bless everybody.